I want to thank you for those very kind and generous words. And I want to thank you, Reverend Hood, and Bill Middlebrooks, Shirley Norcross, for asking me to join you this fine Sunday. It's not every day that a money changer is welcomed into the family. Thank you as well to the Pilot Club for all your extraordinary efforts to strengthen this community. I stand here humbled by those who have preached from this pulpit before me. Giants like Andrew Young, Coleman Young, Paul Robeson, Mary McLeod Bethune, and not least of whom are the two Reverend Hoods, Senior and the third. Kathy and I had the opportunity this morning to take a brief drive, and Reverend Hood Senior was just showing us all the development and everything that has happened at Plymouth United Church of Christ, and it's just unbelievable what Father and Son have accomplished. I have to tell you, over the years, it's been an absolute delight for my wife, Kathy, and me to build relationships with the Hoods. As you know, Reverend Hood Sr. has been a terrific partner to my Honduras. And as you know, not many people can keep up with Honduras, but they make a great couple, a loving couple. And Reverend Hood, you are certainly a full-fledged member of our family. I remember with great affection my Uncle Victor. As Honduras said, that was my father's brother, my father's youngest brother, and my lovely cousin Julie, who was such a vibrant force. We had a very close relationship with Honduras and Uncle Victor. Uncle Victor was a strong role model for me, and he was one of my most important mentors. Our families visited one another in Detroit and New York through the years. And it's also wonderful to see my cousin Victor. We see each other quite often, talk quite often, and I'm so glad, Victor, that you could be here this morning. You are all part of our family, and I'm grateful to be invited to join yours today. Now, I say invited, but those of you who know my Honduras know that this was not an invitation that I could or should refuse. It was a command performance. I'm even here on time. So I'm here as a nephew, not just as a businessman. Now, I'm proud and privileged to represent American Express in a city where we have deep roots. American Express opened its first office in Detroit in 1850, the same year the company was founded. The Detroit agent who got his start here, James T. Fargo, later spent over 30 years as president of American Express. Now, as you heard, for me, I've always loved Detroit, ever since I saw it through the wide eyes of a child. Doris told you I was the ring bearer. And my father decided, rather than take a plane, the experience was going to be special. So we took a train from New York to Detroit. And as you can imagine, for a 4-year-old, the experience was unbelievable. the skyline, all lit up at night, music playing on so many street corners. I remember my relatives taking me to see GM, Ford, Chrysler. We went by the Detroit Athletic Club, and I looked up at that magnificent building and could hardly believe my eyes. Even as a boy, I could sense how vibrant the city was, how alive. You couldn't help but feel at home. Detroit was a mecca for all Americans, particularly for African Americans. It happened because folks left behind centuries of hardship and degradation and came north to build better lives. As the author Richard Wright put it as he journeyed to Chicago, with ever watchful eyes and bearing scars visible and invisible, I headed north, full of a hazy notion that life could be lived with dignity. At the terminus of the Great Migration, people like Wright found that dignity. They worked hard and created a thriving black middle class. They put down roots and built institutions like this one, 95 years old and going strong. They became the true motor behind Motor City. Truly, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. The distance we have from those days, in terms of time and the difficult reality Detroit faces today, should not obscure what this city has meant and still means. So we're here today to celebrate Black achievement. And I've been asked to talk a bit about this. But this is Detroit, the arsenal of democracy, the home of Coleman Young, Aretha Franklin, and Rosa Parks. My telling you about Black achievement would be like telling Moses how to part the Red Sea, like telling Gabriel how to blow a trumpet, or Berry Gordy how to produce a record. That spirit of striving and succeeding, this congregation knows it better than anyone, because it is all around us, written into the very history of this city. Still, I've been asked to share a few thoughts, and I know better than to refuse my hors. Now, as you no doubt guessed by now, I am not a preacher. I'm a businessman. My first instinct was to prepare this presentation with charts and graphs. And if I were to prepare that presentation, if I were to speak with the cold calculus of the corporate executive, it would be all too easy to say that the Detroit of old is a memory, gone along with a quarter of the city's population. It would be easy to throw around words like bankruptcy and decline, to write Detroit's final chapter in Red Ink and close the book on this great American city, to say, like the man interviewed in the newspaper, selling metal for scrap, all that's left here are the remnants of what was. It would be easy to do that, perhaps. But as Reverend Hood III said, it would be wrong. Because figures in an accounting book and items on a police blotter aren't the full measure of a society. Not even close. They can't account for the spirit of a people or the enduring strength of their commitment to one another. Yes, many of the old manufacturing jobs have disappeared, but I have faith that new jobs will take their place. Yes, too many people have packed up and left, but others will flock to this city as they always always have. Yes, crime is too high, and unemployment is too high, and graduation rates are too low. But I have faith that all that can and will be overcome. And Detroit can be that Mecca once again. Now, my faith comes from experience. It comes from seeing neighborhoods, communities, cities like this one band together in service to one another. From seeing helping hands reach out and lift people up and point the way for folks who are lost. I offer you one illustration, a parable, if you will. It comes not from the Holy Father, but my own father. As Aunt Doris said, my father, Hortensius Chennault, was a dentist. He grew up in Mount Healthy, Ohio, and became a dentist because the person he admired in his community, one of the few black role models in the professional class, was a dentist. So my father worked hard, graduated first in his class from Howard's Dental School, and earned the highest score on the licensing exam in New York State history, and became a dentist himself. And one day, in my hometown of Hempstead, New York, my father saw a young man at the store, a boy probably 10 or 12 years old. The boy was very upset, and it became evident to my father that the boy had a very bad toothache. So my father said, "Look, come to my office." They went to my father's office, and my father took care of his tooth. He didn't charge him anything. Afterwards, the boy asked my father where he was from. He asked what it took to be a dentist. He figured out my father's office hours and his lunch breaks, and every few weeks, this kid started coming by to say hi and tell him how he was doing in school. Now, my father lost track of him probably when the young man graduated from high school. But 15 or 20 years later, this young man, grown up now, came to my father's office, and he was a dentist. Now, there are a few lessons I take away from this story. The first is that achievement demands individual effort. The initiative and hard work of a young boy who set his sights on a dream and made it happen. As my father always told me, the one thing in life that we can control is our own performance. And that's what that young boy did. But the second lesson, the one I'd like to focus on today, is about service to others. Because in this story, there was a young man who sought out a better future for himself. But there was also an older man who reached out and helped him get there. That was my father, faced with a community member in need, stepping forward and living the words of Galatians 6:10. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men. Now, I believe most people are naturally inclined towards altruism. Something in our DNA makes us want to help other people. It is not a coincidence that every major religion exhorts us to feed the hungry, to comfort the afflicted, to care for the least of these, our brothers and sisters. That sense of service, that belief in something bigger than ourselves, is anchored in our faith. Sitting in the pews of the South Hempstead Congregational Church, I hear the words of Scripture reminding us, "Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds." Reverend Hood, I know, preaches that same message every All of you practice it in your daily lives in countless ways. That habit of service is especially strong in neighborhoods, communities, and cities like this one. We watch out for the neighbor's kids. We try hard to be good role models. And that's because there was a time not that long ago when we had to serve one another. Because nobody else was going to serve us. We knew that. And even though the world has changed in some positive ways, even though we no longer have to fend entirely for ourselves, that web of connectedness still binds us tight. We heard about it this morning, and you hear about it every Sunday. We see it in a church whose members donate computers to students in low-income neighborhoods and take city kids to camp under the stars. That insistent, persistent Isaiah's refrain, "Here am I, send me." We see it in a ministry whose members care as much about refugees in Liberia as they do cleaning up crime in their own backyard. Here am I, send me. We see it in good people, caring people, taking time after a long shift to visit the sick, in community members, bringing food to those shut in their homes, and to those with no homes at all. Here I am, send me. Living these principles day by day, not just on Sundays, not just when people are watching. That's how we fulfill our deepest values. And it's how we strengthen and grow our communities. Because yes, we derive personal fulfillment from the service that we do, but the whole notion of service is that it's not about the one doing the service. So when we look around at this beautiful church, when we look at all these ministries that bring tangible, ongoing benefits to so many folks, we don't just see good people doing good work. We see a community transformed. We see a community with the incredible potential to further transform everything it touches. And through our skills, through our hard work, we can all put ourselves in a position to render the highest level of service to others, to embrace the privilege and the power of service. Because I firmly believe that without service, we cannot have real success. Without altruism, there is no true achievement. Now, some of you may be wondering, why is a CEO going on about service? And if we're being honest, the private sector doesn't always strike folks as an obvious place to serve. This isn't exactly how the business world is portrayed today. And some of that reputation is well deserved. When I was younger, I certainly didn't think business meant service. I imagined I'd go into politics or into the law, maybe become a civil rights lawyer. And when I thought about the next avenue of opportunity, the next path to be blazed, I realized that business was an area where I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me. And I thought that maybe the corporate world was a place where I could make a difference. I realized that fueling economic growth, jump-starting small businesses, helping people with their personal finances so that they can find a firmer footing, those things expand opportunity for people. They help folks build better lives for themselves and strengthens their communities. Simply put, they make a difference. Right here in Detroit, for example, American Express is partnering with small businesses to help them grow. That's just a small illustration of how our company defines what it means to be a service company. Not just offering consumer products, but caring about the consumers themselves. See, my philosophy is that corporations exist because society allows them to exist. In exchange, there must be an understanding that we will contribute to society. And that's what many of us in the business world are increasingly trying to do. All of us in our careers, in our daily lives, are seeking ways to give back. For me, that's been through business. But of course, there are so many other avenues to serve. It was one of our heroes, Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Everyone can be great because anyone can serve." He was right. Anyone can serve anytime in any capacity. And we each have to find our own ways, not necessarily the form of service that makes the biggest impact, but the kind that makes the biggest impact on each of us. For some of you, that could be a career in business. For others, maybe it's teaching or medicine, social work, or the law. It might be after-school tutoring or a canned food drive or mentoring Detroit's next great dentist. There is no single right way. There is only the way that feels right to you. Before I turn you back over to the capable hands of Reverend Hood, I'd like to return to something I mentioned earlier. The theme we celebrate on this special Sunday, Black achievement. When we talk about Black achievement in this country, when we chart the progress of our community, we often talk about the landmarks, Brown v. Board, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. We look at the reality, the blessed reality, of a Black man in the Oval Office and the many other Black leaders populating the ranks of politics and corporate America. And those watershed moments in our history are certainly to be celebrated and venerated. I know that's how I feel. But if we see Black achievement only as a collection of headlines in the media, we're missing something fundamental. If we imagine that the giants of the movement, men and women like Dr. King and Thurgood Marshall and Rosa Parks, were simply bestowed with leadership abilities beyond those of mere mortals, we sell ourselves short. Because the roots of their incredible achievements are right here, in churches like this one, in communities and cities like this one, in the strong bonds and strong values we all share, and the ways we try to serve one another. These men and women we revere understood that contrary to what some might believe, leadership is not just about hierarchy or title. And seeing some young people here today, I would add, it doesn't even require gray hair. King was 26 when he led the bus boycott in Montgomery. John Lewis was 23 when he spoke at the March on Washington. Young people, especially in this century, with the tools at your disposal, have the capacity to do extraordinary things in any endeavor you choose. Real leaders, regardless of age, are simply people who know their values and act on their values and empower those around them to do the same. They understand that nobody achieves success on their own, and that success is never a straight line. It was not for me, and it will not be for any of you. So if anyone wants to understand Black achievement, if they want to understand what real leadership can mean, they shouldn't just go to the boardroom or even the Oval Office. They should come here to cities like this one, to churches like this one, grounded in the values like the ones that Plymouth United Church of Christ demonstrates daily. And they should remind themselves never to forget all those people, famous and unsung, who fought the status quo so that Black people would have opportunities in this society. I'll close with this thought. It comes from an Alabama sharecropper whose story is told in a classic book about life in the Old South called All God's Dangers, The Life of Nate Shaw. This is what he had to say. Some folks don't use the time God gives them. That's why they're liable to come up defeated. Some folks don't use the time God gives them. That's why they're liable to come up defeated. That's the wisdom of a man who achieved much, even if he had very little on a material basis. I know that sometimes, especially when things around us look bleak, it's easy to feel down, to feel powerless, to come up defeated. But if you remember one thing I say, I hope it's this. We can't control the ups and downs of life. We can't control the ups and downs of the economy. We can't wave away violence with a magic wand or remake our neighborhoods and cities overnight. But we can use the time God gives us. We can control our own performance. We can control what we stand for as individuals and how we respond in our communities, hour of need. We can teach our children well and offer them every opportunity to achieve their dreams. We can use the time God gives us. And when we come together, when we serve one another, we can truly make a powerful difference. Thank you all very much for the honor of joining you on this joyous day, this day the Lord made.